any group that I was working with that was unable to finish working through and measuring all of the fish. Some groups were able to get through. Some groups were trying, but we just didn't have enough time because we were doing some great math talking with some other things that we were doing before this. So I already measured fish A, B, C, D, and E. I'm going to fish F. I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to kind of line it up as best as possible. And I'm going to use this highlighter. This is 1 inch. This is 1 1/4. This is 1 1/2. 1 3/4. 2 inches. And we're going to do it to the closest whole inch or the closest fourth or third. So remember, we already passed 2 whole inches. Now this is about 2 1/4, and it's a little bit past. Let's give this fish a little extra length. You know what I'm talking about? So we will say this is 2 1/2. We'll just give that fish a little bit of extra length. So for fish G, I'm gonna line it up as best as possible. Line it up at 0. I'm going to start with my highlighter right here. So this is 0 inches, 1/4, 1/2 of an inch, 3/4, 1 whole inch, 1 whole inch and 1/4, 1 whole inch and a half, 1 whole inch and 3/4, 2 whole inches, 2 1/4 inches, 2 1/2 inches, 2 3/4 inches, and we're at 3 inches, and it's a little bit more, so we'll say about 3 1/4. We'll give it a little bit extra. We're just rounding up for right now. So fish G, 3 1/4. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H is the next fish. Ooh, H is a little bit small. So let me get my highlighter. I'm starting from 0. It's longer than 1/4. It's longer than a half. It's longer than 3/4. It's longer than 1 whole inch. It is longer than 1 1/4 inches. It's a little bit longer than 1 1/2 inches. So we'll give it a little bit of a boost and say 1 3/4. We'll say 1 3/4 inches. So these are mixed numbers because we have a whole number and then we have a fraction. So just like when we had improper fractions, these are very important because they are larger than 1 whole. The next fish is I. Not I like my eye, but fish I like the letter. You know what I'm talking about. Here is the highlighter. I'm starting from 0 as close as possible. This is 1 whole inch, 2 whole inches, and there's a little bit extra. So 2 1/4, 2 1/2. This is 2 1/2. Let me type that in. 2 1/2. 2 1/2 inches. 2 1/2 inches. Perfect. Now I'm going to fish J. We're almost done. We have 3 fish left. So I am starting at 0. I'm measuring it. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1 whole inch. Now this is larger than 1 whole inch. This is 1 1/4 inches, 1 1/2 inches, 1 3/4. I'm going to put 1 3/4. That's how I am going to record it. So 1 3/4 inches. I'm going to go to K. Going to line it up as best as possible. I think that's it right there where that 0 is. Boom. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1 whole. Ooh, 1/4. And it's a little bit more than 1/4. We'll give it a boost, some charity. being generous. So we will say this is about 1.5. Because we are just rounding, we are getting as close as possible to the closest fourth or closest half. So both of those answers would work. We're not being precise. We're estimating. We're rounding a little bit. All right. So we're starting at 0. This is 1 inch. 2 inches. Ooh, this is 2 1/4. 2.5. 2 3/4 inches. I don't need the eraser. 2 3/4 inches. Perfect. So we have a table over here that we just recorded all this data. All of these measurements. That is data. Now, what we are going to do with this data, what I want to see you do with this data is make graphs. Put this data into a graph. We learned about line plot graphs. We learned about bar graphs. We learned about picture graphs. But because we have some mixed numbers, which means we have a whole number and a fraction, for example, 1.5, 2 3/4, 3 1/4, those are mixed numbers. I want you to make sure that you can use a line plot graph. And let me show you how to start it.